A lot can happen in a little time as the Bears clear cap space in time for free agency to begin next week. DJ Moore leaves Chicago with one of the all-time greatest moments in the Bears-Packers rivalry. And with the sudden retirement of Drew Dalman, there are a lot more positions of need than it seemed before. Hello, everyone, and welcome into the offseason. I'm Cassie Carlson, joined by the Athletics' Dan Wiederer and former Bears center Olin Kreutz. Good to have you in studio. There is so much to get to. And Dan, you called it at the Combine last week. Your bold prediction, bold of this offseason, was that DJ Moore was going to be traded before April, and it comes to fruition this week. How do you feel like the Bears are better or differently positioned than you did a week ago?
Look, basically you're taking resources that you got from this trade, including a second-round pick, and you're reallocating them to address other needs on your team. You feel very comfortable with where your pass-catching arsenal is at. Colson Loveland's part of that. Luther Burden's part of that. Rome Odunze is obviously part of that. And now you take this second-round pick, and you hope that you can find another difference maker. That's going to be a pick at the end of the round 2, top 60 pick. You try to turn that guy into somebody that can help you somewhere else on your football team. I think DJ will ultimately benefit from the change of scenery, uniting with a familiar coach in Joe Brady, and then obviously an MVP quarterback in Josh Allen.
All right, Olin, everyone was taken aback with the Drew Dalman news that he is retiring at 27 years old after just 5 seasons, one with the Bears. Is finding a veteran center now priority number 1 for this Bears front office?
Yeah, I was taken aback too. I don't know about you guys, but my phone started blowing up at like 1:45, and everybody was texting me something about Dalman. I was thinking, why is everybody worried about Drew Dalman? Why are you worried about your Pro Bowl center? But anytime a young guy like that retires, you're surprised, obviously, especially in the NFL, and the money they're getting paid nowadays obviously offers, that they could walk away earlier now. And obviously, Drew, congratulations to him. What a career he's had. He had a great career at Stanford. He had a great career in the NFL and made the Pro Bowl his last year. Not a lot of guys get to walk away the way they want to go out on top, and Drew Dalman got to do that. But as far as the Bears go, at least a big hole in the middle of the offensive line, as you just alluded to. And what kind of center do they need? I would think a veteran-type center who could help arrange protections there in the middle of the offensive line and keep the offense moving in the right direction. But the good thing is, you put a center, it's really, I don't want to say an easy job, but put him in between Joe Thuney, who was Protector of the Year, put him between Jonah Jackson, right, and Darnell Wright, who is an ascending right tackle in the NFL. And that's a job that a lot of centers would want. But you would think that a veteran guy solidify the middle of the offensive line, keep the offense moving in the direction that they want it moving. The one critical thing to think about, though, is that the run game is super important in Ben Johnson's offense. The ability to reach guys, a reach block in the NFL to cut off a defense is extremely important in Ben Johnson's offense, something Frank Ragnow was good at, Drew Dalman is good at, Tyler Linderbaum is good at. You just can't put anybody there and think that the run game will work as effectively as it did last year.
Yeah, we're going to have the more Drew Dalman center conversation in a little bit. The good news is that the Bears are below the cap, which a week ago they were not. Everyone was wondering how they were going to get this cap space, trading away DJ Moore. They get $16.5 million in cap space. Drew Dalman should free up $10 million. They cut Tremaine Edmonds, which everyone was expecting. That frees up another $15 million. So they are positioned to make some moves next week when free agency officially opens on Wednesday. Let's start with DJ Moore, his impact in 3 years in the Bears. He was a part of that original Ryan Poles blockbuster trade, which eventually brought the Bears Caleb Williams with the number 1 overall pick.
Huge gift basket that the Bears got back 3 years ago, and that was at a different time in the history of the franchise. They were planning on DJ Moore and Justin Fields being this tandem that was going to lift the Bears to new heights. You fast forward 3 years and you see that they're both out of the picture now, and you're regrouping again with a new quarterback and new weapons. I think DJ was a very well-regarded guy inside that building, always tough, always competitive. Obviously, the production fell, and from people I talked to around the league in Indianapolis last week, Cassie, there's like a head-scratching that goes on how a guy who's been so productive with every quarterback he's played with, and it's a long list, suddenly had this fall-off with maybe the most talented guy he's ever been with, and that's something that Buffalo is going to have to try to solve now.
Well, the conversation going into this season was that there were so many mouths to feed on this offense, and how was the ball going to be spread around? And then you see the emergence of Colson Loveland, Luther Burden, Rome Odunze gets hurt, and of course DJ Moore was such a critical part of this offense, especially towards the end of the season. Olin, a lot of people are debating, is he a true wide receiver 1? Or I feel like he goes into Buffalo, and he is, because they don't have one, and they haven't had one since Stephon Diggs. But is he league-wide considered that type of player?
He's not a normal wide receiver 1. He's not like Justin Jefferson type of the Minnesota Vikings, right? And the Bears are looking for a wide receiver 1, which kind of made DJ Moore expendable, obviously, right? And it just But at the end of the year, when you watch them against the Packers, I was watching some of the Rams game before we came on today, and the level he was playing at and the plays that he made, you do worry about losing him a little bit, and you do worry about, okay, will Luther Burden line up correctly? Will he run the right route? Will he do all the things that a veteran will do? But when you take a guy like Rome Odunze in the top 10, when you take Luther Burden, you take Colston Loveland, it makes guys like DJ more expendable. And if you can get a second-round pick, you understand why Ryan Poles made the move. You just worry about having that many young guys as your skill guys on an offense that has also a young quarterback, right? And we saw that a lot of that was DJ Moore and Caleb couldn't get on the same page on some plays, but he still was a tough wide receiver, made a lot of plays. I'm interested to see how this offense moves forward without him.
And Cassie, I wonder who the leader in that receivers room becomes. Do you have to go out and get a veteran now just to be sort of that older presence in the room? Obviously, you expect Rome Odunze to ascend and become, a top 10 caliber pick at that position. But right now, you've got inexperience in that room, and you're going to have to address that in some way.
Does Ryan Poles win this trade? I feel like it worked out really well for both sides because originally when it was reported, it was like the Bears are going to get a mid-round pick. I was thinking like third, fourth round. But to see a second-round pick with DJ Moore, to me, it feels like the Bears now have 4 picks in the top 90 in the draft this year. They have draft capital. They have the ability to go out and find some young players, and maybe they could address wide receiver in the draft if they hold on to all 4 because it's a really deep class at that position.
Well, it tells you how desperate Buffalo was, right, to get a receiver and the level their receivers played at last year. And they're in a win now mode. They have to win now with their quarterback, Josh Allen. But if you think about the Bears, you think about Ben Johnson, you think about Antoine Randall, the wide receiver coach, assistant head coach. They believe in their ability to pick out wide receivers like Luther Burden, like Colston Loveland, and develop them. So I think a lot of the decisions with Ryan Poles sitting with Ben Johnson say, okay, can we trade DJ Moore? Can these guys lead our room? I think when you talk about a leader in the room, when you have an alpha like Randall, he can carry that mantle for a little bit. Obviously, you always need an older receiver to help the young guys develop. And you saw the younger receivers come on social media and thank DJ Moore and the way they felt about it. And it was a little different between the outside noise and what they felt about DJ Moore, right? And a lot of people question his effort on the last day. When you go back and watch that game in its entirety, man, he was playing tough, good football throughout that game.
Well, I feel like the national narrative is all because of that last play. And Chris Collinsworth, in real time, calling out DJ Moore for letting up on his route that led to the interception in overtime. But I feel like locally, everyone always knew that DJ Moore was the most dependable, available player. And as Ryan Poles has pointed out a number of times, like toughness is the main thing that stands out because he played hurt so many times in all 3 seasons.
Never missed a game. And in regards to that last play, understand something. The first read for Caleb Williams was gone because Luther Burden got swallowed up right off the snap. Caleb's going to have to learn to find the flat safety valve on a play like that. And given the circumstances and the situation with the season on the line and sudden death overtime, just find the easy play and don't try to make something that's not there. And that's obviously it was defined as a miscommunication. It cost you your season. But I feel like DJ got an exaggerated level of condemnation for that play that he probably didn't deserve.
Imagine that in today's world, right? Social media and football.
Blown up.
Imagine something getting blown up. But Luther Burden has been fun to watch. And he is fantastic with the ball in his hands, and so is Colston Loveland, and so is Rome Odunze being good. Obviously, he kind of fell off last year later with the injury and all the things that were going on, but you can see why they made that move and added a second-round pick, and whether they win the trade or not kind of depends on what happens with the second-round pick and where they go and those kind of things.
One thing I'll never forget is Rome Odunze and his body language, the look on his face, not only after the loss to the Rams, but the day after in locker cleanout, and him vocalizing his disappointment in himself for the season that he had. And I think there is a lot of pressure, and he feels it to become wide receiver 1, given that he was a top 10 pick, given that everyone has these expectations of him coming out of Washington. He said that he doesn't believe in 50-50 balls. He's a 100 or nothing guy. And I think you want to see that aggression come out a little bit more in Odunze. If you were to guess who does emerge as the top receiver next year?
Well, I personally start with Loveland, because if you look at that playoff win over Green Bay, we all talk about the game-winning touchdown pass to DJ, but it was Colston Loveland who was the star of that football game. He was the guy that put the offense on his back. I think he had 15 targets in that game, went up over 100 yards. That's the guy that's going to be Caleb's guy, I think, going forward. Rome's going to be in that conversation for sure, but I think you see an emerging star in Colston Loveland.
Olin, you like watching Luther. Do you think Luther can be wide receiver 1, or do you go, it's got to be Rome?
I don't think next year he can be wide receiver. Okay. I think he can work his way into it. I think Rome Odunze, if we're just talking about the wide receivers, I agree with Dan on Coast and Loveland and how comfortable Caleb seemed to be going to him in critical situations. He would go to him. I was looking for Coast and myself on third downs. Like I knew that's where Caleb wanted to go, that he was going to win those matchups and those routes. So I think Rome Odunze is a guy, obviously, he went to Washington like I went to Washington, so I do believe in him. But I think he will develop into the wide receiver one. I think he's a little bigger than Luther Bird, and he's kind of a matchup problem. And I think his game will develop under Antoine Randall and Ben Johnson.
All right, everyone was wondering when this trade went down, does that mean the Bears are out of the Maxx Crosby sweepstakes, or are they still in it because of the draft capital that they do have available? And I feel like Vegas right now is starting to realize that they're probably not going to get a player and 2 first-round picks. Is that the reality that Vegas is facing, and is that why the Bears maybe are still in the conversation?
Well, I'll put it this way. The Raiders don't have a ticking clock on this. They don't have to get rid of Maxx Crosby this month. They can play this out and see, how much pressure they can put on outside suitors to up their offer. And the Bears have been listed a lot. Baltimore's been listed. Dallas has been listed. And so you just try, if you're in their shoes, to leverage that the best you can. And the Bears have to stay involved while also not getting outside their parameters and what they're comfortable with.
Olin, knowing that they need a center, they need a left tackle, they should probably have a safety on the roster, a linebacker now, and edge and defensive tackle. Yes. Do you think Maxx Crosby is still viable, or do you look in other directions to fill this roster?
I think you have to check in on Maxx Crosby and see what the Raiders, and can you talk them down from where they are sitting right now, which the rumor is 2 1s and a starter, right? But interesting that we're talking about pass rusher, Montez said, Javon Dexter, Dale, all the money that they have put there already. They still haven't solved that problem. Mm-hmm. But we all watched this guy play against the Bears last year. We've all seen film on Maxx Crosby. If you have a chance to get a guy like that, I always say a pass rusher is like a closer in baseball, like Mariano Rivera walks out and he closes it. At the end of games, you have the quarterback and you have the pass rusher, right? And say who can win that battle. So right now the Bears, Montez Sweat, playing good football, but I don't know how you guys feel. It always seems like, he's just late. He wins his matchup. He gets to the quarterback, but he's just getting there just a second late. You got to check in on Maxx Crosby, see if you can get that kind of guy.
I call my O-linemen the Avengers. And so all of them collectively, form a very formidable team to go out there and go to war with. I call Drew Dalman the Hulk. He's the brains and all of it, but when he gets out there and on the field, he's strong as can be, fast and the right guy for the job. For us and my future and our future here.
Welcome back to the Offseason. I'm Cassie Carlson, joined by Dan Wiederer and Olin Kreutz. Time to get into the discussion about Drew Dalman, who informs the Bears that he is retiring at the age of 27 years old after 5 seasons in the NFL, 1 with the Bears after signing a 3-year, $42 million deal just last free agency. Dan, we're coming back from the Combine, and this is why it's so shocking, because we knew they had holes to fill on this roster. Left tackle was the obvious one on the offensive line, but this didn't seep through any conversations, it seemed like, down in Indy.
None for me. Olin talked about his phone blowing up unexpectedly the other day. I felt like it was a stare at the wall moment where you're like, wait, what? Like, this was nowhere near my radar for this decision, and it takes you about 10 minutes to process it and then figure out what's next. When we talk about Dalman's exit, DJ's exit, Tremaine Edmonds' exit, sure, it clears up some resources for you, but you also now have 3 starting spots to fill. And so you have to really understand the gravity of that, particularly at a position like center where Drew Dalman was such a resource for Caleb last year in helping his ascension.
Well, I go back to, remember Caleb's rookie season when he was in charge of so much at the line of scrimmage, and we were all wondering why, as a rookie, he was tasked with doing all that, knowing he was trying to learn so much about just playing in the NFL. And Drew Dalman became the brains and the quarterback of the offensive line. Olin, I want to get your perspective as the former player. Played 14 seasons, retired at 34 years old. Just the mind game that you go through when you start contemplating this decision. And once you start thinking about it, is it hard to get out of that?
I think it is. And once you start thinking about retirement, you're probably retired, right? Especially in a game of football. It's a tough game. And when you wake up with aches and pains and you're thinking, should I still be doing this? And this is going to be hard. And it's really the off-season work that gets to you, right? The training and the getting your body in shape and lifting the heavy weights and going through the process and the rigors of trying to get ready for what is a tough season, especially when you play center against big guys. Remember, his dad, Chris Dalman, played center and retired from a neck injury, right? So obviously they've probably talked about football and the NFL and what it does to your body, and he has a different perspective than most people have, having a former NFL player in his house and probably talking to his dad about, look, should I keep going? I don't feel great. Well, if you don't, you probably want to get out, right? Because that's when you do get injured, and that's when things do get harder to do. And obviously, honestly, that is respecting your teammates and your team more. When you do walk away, when you can't do it no more. So I'm sure he went through that. I'm sure it was not an easy decision. I did play 14 years, and he retired after 50 games, and it's a little different. I retired at 34, but when it is your time, when you start thinking those thoughts, and you're like, man, I don't know if I can wake up and do this anymore, then it is your time to move on.
You kind of alluded to something I was going to ask you. It's more safe to retire than to go back not fully in it. Like if your head is not fully in it when you return to training camp or off-season workouts, like that's actually more dangerous for yourself and your teammates. Is that true?
It is true, and he knows that, okay, I'm not going to be able to wake up in the morning and do the weights that I have to do and do the workouts I have to do to get my body ready to do what it has to do. And look, to be honest, he could have just showed up.
Yeah.
Went on IR, not played great, and made all the money, that he could make. So, a lot of respect to him for doing what he did earlier and giving the Bears a chance to go through the process to find a center now. He probably told the team a while ago, I'm sure Coach Rochar, Ryan Poles, Ben Johnson, I'm sure they've been burning the midnight oil trying to look at who can replace a guy like Drew Dalman. I'm going to tell you guys right now, there's one guy maybe they can get, and everyone else is going to be a step back.
And that guy is Tyler Linderbaum. Best option on the market, also going to reset the market at $20 million plus. Is that worth the price tag, Dan? What's the comparison in contracts?
Man, people can look it up nowadays, right? They can look it up online, but Tyler Linderbaum is that kind of player.
Yeah.
He does make the critical blocks that centers have to make to be the highest paid center in the NFL. I'm talking about a reach block. I'm talking about a guy who can pull and get to a linebacker, and I'm talking about a guy who can affect the game on screens. Two things that Dalman did really well. He did reach blocks really well in outside zone, and he affected the game on a lot of screen plays. So replacing that will not be easy, and you heard Caleb talk about he was incredibly smart, organizing protections, organizing the run game. Yeah. Anybody who watches film sees him make a point. Caleb points the guy after Dalman makes the point. So Dalman was really running a lot of that for him.
All right, we know that Ben Johnson comes from Detroit. That's how we get a lot of our comparisons. He had Frank Ragnow, an experienced center. He then goes to Drew Dalman. I'm looking at Ben Johnson's influence on how this roster is structured each and every year, and I'm thinking this is going to be their top priority come Wednesday.
Well, look, their offensive line has got to be part of their priorities for sure, and you've got now two big holes there. Two of the most important positions up front, obviously left tackle and center, and you would imagine that they've got to address this. Linderbaum would be the one guy that's the clear upgrade. As you guys have mentioned, he'd also take probably almost twice the cap space that they were allocating to Drew Dalman. And so then you've got to say, okay, where are we willing to sacrifice in other areas of our team? You've still got a safety room to fill entirely. You've got, as you mentioned, defensive line needs. So it's going to be really fascinating to watch them put this puzzle together next week because there's a lot of priorities, and this thing gets fluid now. It's been fluid this week. Yeah. We've experienced it all week, and so you better be ready to be nimble and adapt with everything that's going on around the league.
Something could have happened in the 30 minutes that we're sitting here. Yeah. We don't know. The Lions are releasing Taylor Decker. That's an option at left tackle, another guy with experience in Ben Johnson's system. Do you like that as a one-year possibility while Ozzie Trapello rehabs back?
Certainly I'd consider it. You've got the familiarity with Ben. I think he's going to be 33 in training camp next year. You got to make sure that physically he's still all there with where you're at. But Ben knows him better than anybody, and it's similar to Jonah Jackson last year. Like Ben said, trust me, he'll be okay. And certainly he was in their first season together, and so that you lean on that, obviously.
Oh, and I want to go back to you. We know you're a huge fan of Linderbaum. What's the separation between him and the next guy that everyone's talking about in Connor McGovern from the Bills?
In my opinion, it's pretty big, and here we are in 2026, and I've been doing analyst work for a long time, and all of a sudden everybody thinks center's the most important position on the Chicago Bears. And the offensive line, everyone needs one all of a sudden. But everyone's finally come around, and I appreciate that. Yeah. I appreciate that. But no, to me, Connor McGovern's a really good football player, and he would work, right? Because we talked about earlier, Jonah Jackson and Joe Tooney and Darnell Wright, and they have a very good offensive line. But the things Tyler Linderbaum, anybody who wants to watch film, go watch the Baltimore Ravens play the Green Bay Packers late in the year. And everybody talked about Derrick Henry. Watch Tyler Linderbaum dominate the game.
Is that something that you want to see, though, from him particular? Like you think of, I guess the Bills had a good run game, too, but you think of some of the best rushing offenses in the league, and that's why they're looking at guys like McGovern and Linderbaum, because that is what Ben Johnson prides his offense on?
Ben Johnson does what a lot of good coaches do. They ask the guy to do what they're good at, right? And the Buffalo Bills, the Joe Brady, they did that also, right? They asked Connor McGovern to do what he was good at. He is not great at the reach block we were talking about earlier, but when you have like Joe Thuney, Jonah Jackson, Darnell Wright, there's other ways you can run the football. Like eventually, if you have to get a guy there who's serviceable, plays at a above average level, they'll do well even with Connor McGovern.
Welcome back to the offseason. Free agency opens up on Wednesday. Dan, you mentioned that the Bears have 40 roster spots to fill. They have no center. They need a linebacker. They have no starting safeties. So we're going to go through a handful of players, and we'll see if we think they'll be signed by the Bears next week. And let's start with an easy one. Is it easy? Kevin Byard?
I think it's easy. I think priority-wise, they want him back. He wants to be back in this program. I think they can find a deal that works. So I say yes on Byard.
Olin, yes or no?
Yes, I think Byard will be back. I think both sides said that they both wanted it to work out. So I think it will.
So does that mean Jaquan Brisker is a no?
I would say no to Jaquan Brisker. I think maybe he'll get a little bit better value on the market than the Bears are willing to pay, and so he maybe gets a new home next week.
Coming
We'll
off
give
his
Brisker a maybe just because of his health issues, and we'll see what kind of money he gets somewhere else. And this may be his best shot to maybe take a one-year deal and they get a bigger contract next year.
Interesting. How about Trey Hendrickson? He is a former sack leader. He is the biggest name on the edge rushers in free agency, and it's going to cost a lot of money.
Well, it's an exciting name, but with the age and some of the recent injury history, I'd be a little bit hesitant to go outside the parameters of what you have allocated for what makes you comfortable in that regard. We'll see where the Bears head, but I say no on that one.
I say no, but I will say the last thing a pass rusher loses is their pass rush. Like those guys can rush the passer till they're well in their late 30s. So if the Bears do miss on Maxx Crosby and want to take a look at him, I could see that he'd probably be more of a third down guy with Dial playing first and second down. And then you have three guys who can get after the passer late in the game. But Trey Hendrickson is a guy I think he probably has 3 or 4 more years left rushing the passer.
Wow. How about Cam Jordan? This was interesting. Released by the Saints, 10.5 sacks last season. Familiarity with Dennis Allen, but older.
I'm going to turn this one to Olin because you say you have familiarity with him, right?
I think Cam was a rookie my half a year in New Orleans.
It's crazy.
He does play good football, I would say, at the right price, but I'd probably say no right now just because they have first and second down defensive ends in Montez and Dial, and they probably just need a pass rush guy.
All right, some interesting things going on in Green Bay right now. Maybe we like to see the chaos with the Packers because it doesn't happen too often. Rashawn Gary, is he getting released? Are they trying to trade him? There's some Twitter, Instagram. He released a statement, took it down. If he's available, would you want Rashawn Gary?
Well, look, the talent is really intriguing. That was an interesting development on Friday afternoon.
Yeah.
You always have to be a little bit weary when a social media post goes up and then comes down really quickly. Yeah, there's questions to ask when that happens.
All right, and Olin, Tyler Linderbaum. He's a yes? You don't even know? You don't need to say anything
I would
else?
say Linderbaum is a no just because of maybe what he will cost and what they're already paying Joe Thuney and Jonah Jackson. They have to play Darnell Wright probably by the end of the year. That's a lot of money. In the offensive line, with Tyler Linderbaum he's got to bring in demand between 22 and 25 million a year, and you got to take a look at. You can't put all that. Although I would, can't put all that money into one unit. Ryan Post has to be smarter than me. I'd probably just pay everybody to play offensive line, but probably a no with Linderbaum.
Dan, you get the final word. Is Maxx Crosby on the roster next week?
Whatever happens with Maxx Crosby, make it happen quickly because I don't think we can talk about this for another 2 months.
All right, that is all the time we have for the offseason. For Dan Wiederer, Olin Kreutz, I'm Cassie Carlson. We'll see you next Friday.